Today we are finally going to rebuild this M279 V12 bi-turbo engine that belongs to my S65. This was the last V12 Mercedes Benz produced, and this M279 engine was so good that it was used in the Pagani Huayra, a multi-million-dollar hypercar. But you see, this love affair didn't start here. It started way back by the reliability of his oldest brother, the M120 engine. But let me show you guys another piece of history. Right over here, we've got an M120 V12, and this was the first V12 Mercedes Benz ever produced, and also the first Mercedes engine to find itself in a Pagani. The Zonda is the Countach, the P1, the Veyron of Pagani, and a hypercar loved by millions across the world. So right over here, the first V12 and the last V12, I mean, come on. And I get to rebuild both of them. Enough about the history on these two masterpieces. Let's start rebuilding this 463 kilowatt monster. I have spent a good couple of hours on the Mercedes Benz workshop information system, getting all the specifications and torque settings that's just going to help us to rebuild this engine to perfection. It took me hours to gather all this information, so I thought, you know what, I'll just put it up on the screen. If you ever have to rebuild an engine like this, there you go. There's all the information. You can take a screenshot in 2 seconds and you've got all the information you need. I've packed out all the engine components. I've grouped them in order. This will just help me to assemble this engine as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I also cleaned the engine components, and let me show you guys why I did this. I'm now cleaning the crankshaft, and just look at these small metal particles that's coming from this crankshaft. I mean, if I didn't clean this, this can blow up this engine. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to drop the crankshaft in here. Our crankshaft is nice and clean. I've inspected everything on there. So we're going to drop it into the engine block now, because something that's very important is our oil clearance, and we want to check our oil clearance. And those bearings in the engine block is actually from another car. This is not Mercedes Benz bearings, because the agents couldn't give me bearings for this engine. Can you believe it? They could only supply me the big end bearings for the connecting rods. So we've got our crankshaft installed. It's dry, there's no oil on the bearings. I need to clean these bearings as well. And the reason why we're cleaning the bearings and the crankshaft is because we are checking oil clearance. And if we're going to have oil in there, it's going to take up the space that we're supposed to measure. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a plastic gauge. So this piece of plastic wire is called a plastic gauge. So we're going to break a small piece off, and we're going to put it on our main bearings, where the main bearings should go, on the crankshaft. When you pack these plastic gauges, it's important that you put them on like this and not turn them vertical like that. That's incorrect. So you need to put them like this. For the correct reading. Then we're going to take the bottom bearing section, we're going to put it on the engine, we're going to torque it down to specification. So the torque setting on the inside bolts is 40 newtons with 90-degree angle. and the outside bolts is 30 newtons with a 90-degree angle. And something that's very important when checking your oil clearance with a plastic gauge is to not turn the crankshaft, because the moment you turn the crankshaft, then you can start over. So basically what we're going to do now is, as we're torquing down the crankshaft, we're going to squash those little green plastic bits. And after torquing all the bolts, I have gone ahead, removed them, and now we can check our oil clearance. What we want to see is an evenly squashed plastic gauge, and that is exactly what we are seeing here, which means everything is nice and straight and in line. And also, this measurement to me looks very promising. So now that we've got the plastic gauge pieces squashed, we can check our measurement with this. So there's 0.25, it's a very small oil clearance. So the smaller the oil clearance, the bigger it will crush that plastic gauge. And then we've got 0.38 and then 0.51. So we should be smaller than this one, but bigger than this one, as per specification. I would prefer to be closer to the max size than compared to being closer to the minimum size. And if I look at this, we are definitely bigger than the green one and smaller than the white one. And that's exactly what we want. So I'm happy with the oil clearance. Now we can go ahead, we can clean that off nicely, get some oil onto the bearings, slap it on and torque it, and then we can move over to the next step, which is going to be getting those pistons and the con rods in there. Cleaning, cleaning and more cleaning. This is one of the most important things to do when rebuilding an engine. Clean thrice, fit once. So we're gonna clean a lot of things throughout this engine build. I won't mention them, but we are cleaning, cleaning and cleaning. I'm now just finding the edges just to make sure that they're nice and round. They were dinged a bit by the engineers from handling the engine block. So I just want to make sure that this doesn't push things out of alignment, causing leaks or even messing with your clearance. And I always say, when using engine sealant, less is more. Just a small 1.5mm beading goes a long way. Once the sealant is done, we can drop some fresh oil onto these bearings, making sure that we only get them where they need to be. When we drop the crankshaft in, it doesn't get any oil on the sealant. We've got a perfect seal and a perfect lubrication. The oil clearance that we checked is called the radial oil clearance. There's also an axial oil clearance, which we didn't check, which is controlled by these half moons called the thrust washers. But my engineers confirmed that the actual shaft clearance is correct. Once everything is done, we can finally drop this bearing assembly onto the engine, double checking to make sure that our sealant hasn't been tampered with, hasn't been exposed to any oil. And then we can go ahead and torque this up to manufacturer's specification. Now, in the beginning of the video, I said 30 newtons and 40 newtons. Well, it's actually 20 newtons and 40 newtons, both followed by a 90-degree angle. So I made these little white marks, and now we're just going to turn them 90 degrees. All these bolts, we're going to turn them 90 degrees, and then it's torqued up. And whilst I was busy rebuilding the engine, my panel shop was cracking on with the paint work on the S65. So I think let's go check up on them just to see what the progress looks like at the moment. Beautiful. They've got the entire body prepped and ready for paint on its way into the booth, as we decided to repaint the whole car because every panel had its mark on it. So repainting the whole car was the best option. This is an S65 AMG after all, so why compromise? so the bottom section sorted. Now we can start dropping in the pistons, but I'm happy with this crankshaft. Let's check how nicely this thing's turning. It's beautiful. Something that's very important on this engine is, come let me show you guys. So right over here, we've got our right bank and then we've got our left bank. And if we look at the directional arrows on the pistons, they go in like this. And if you look at the conrods, they flipped around. And the reason for that is it's got a flat side and it's got a bulge on the other side. And the two flat sides should join together like that, because cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 7 shares a journal on the crankshaft. And if we're gonna put them in like that, I mean, this just looks right, that they all should be the same. Then we're gonna have a bulge in the middle, and let me show you guys what's gonna happen then. So these two rods, now they are the way that they're supposed to go onto the crankshaft, and they don't touch. But the moment you flip them, then they start touching. So if you flip one conrod on this engine, you're gonna blow up the engine. This will force the piston offset in the sleeve, causing wear that's gonna look something like this. So it's always good just to soak your bearings in some oil. And then when you remove them, always make sure that your conrod bearing caps is nice and clean. And then when you install your bearings, you wipe the oil off on the back. Fresh oil in there on the bearing. Get it nicely soaked. I'm not replacing the piston rings, and we didn't re-sleeve the engine block. This engine's got silicone sleeves and there was absolutely no damage to these sleeves. I had them checked by my engineers. So basically what we did is we made marks on the piston. So that is exactly where our top piston ring was, and that is exactly where our bottom piston ring was. So we're going to reinstall them on the same spots, because that's where they lapped into these sleeves. Piston rings, Mercedes Benz doesn't sell them loose, they sell them with the pistons. It's for me to replace these 12 pistons, I might as well just go and buy another car, because that's how much they cost, number one. Number two, if we're going to re-sleeve this engine block, then we're going to have to change our piston rings, because this is not your normal cast iron sleeves. So I'm just putting a bit of oil in there. I have cleaned it, I have checked it. I'm just putting some oil in there for lubrication. So right there where they were, just check. Perfect. Ring squeezer. Here comes my favorite sound. Boom. She's in. Right, now we need to flip the engine over so we can see the crankshaft. Beautiful. 15 newtons with a 90-degree angle. One down, 11 more to go. This is what 15 grand's worth of bearings look like. 15K. Now let's get the rest of these pistons in here so we can start getting the cylinder heads on and completing this engine. And now we have to repeat this process 10 more times. And if you wanted to know why I didn't clean these pistons, I didn't want to risk breaking a piston ring. So I'm now carefully lining up each piston ring to their original marks, the way they were before this engine was stripped, getting them back exactly on those same spots, getting them all nicely lubricated and slide them back into this engine block. Torquing up the connecting rod bolts and checking them one by one as we progress by getting all these pistons back in this engine block. And give it our final 90 degrees. And then this task is complete. And there's our 12 pistons fitted. I'm happy. This car is gonna smoke on startup with all this oil in between these piston rings, but just give it a nice rotation. Everything feels seamless and smooth. I'm very happy with this. Now I can just wipe off the excess oil in here. And there we have it, 12 pistons in. I think now we can crack on with the bottom of the engine, get the oil pump in, make sure everything is connected at the bottom, and then we can finish off the front so we can get the cylinder heads on. And in the meanwhile, my panel shop has mossed up the whole S65, making sure that any area that shouldn't be sprayed is covered, and we're not going to get overspray on anything on the car, not on the windows, not on the wheels, not on pipes, fittings or anything. And another important procedure that they have to do is to clean off the whole body, making sure that it's free from any debris, dust or anything of the sort that's gonna affect the quality of the paint job afterwards. And once all these crucial things have been done, they are ready to start throwing on the first layer of paint. Now, I've never seen this car painted. It's always been filthy, it's always been full of marks, so I'm super excited to see the end result on this S65. We are back on the engine and I'm busy fitting down the oil splash plate in the oil pan, followed by the oil pump. And if you're still here, it means that you're enjoying this type of content. So just hit that subscribe button, follow this journey and multiple other journeys with other cars, as we have some epic builds running on this channel. It really means a lot and it really helps the channel out tremendously. I've managed to get the oil pump in here. Now we just need to get the tensioner on here for the slack on the chain. And that's basically just this little bugger over here. So the spring slides in like that. And then I need to hook the spring in on the cover. There we go, oil pump's connected. Now we can flip the engine over. Get all the accessories on the front, get the front cover sealed on, sliding rails in. And once that's done, then we can start putting on the cylinder heads. Then this engine's coming together. We need to set the timing, and then it's just getting all the Tupperware on fitted to the engine. So let's get this front cover sorted. And this is where the fun started. Reassembling an engine that you stripped months ago, you might miss one or two things. So this front cover is not only going on once, but I will spare you guys the details. Let's run through this. Let's get this front cover on here. Let's get it sorted so we can crack on to get the cylinder heads onto this engine. And because things didn't go according to plan, I had to clean and reseal this front cover multiple times. It's quite a lengthy procedure, so if you ever do something like this, make sure you get it right the first time. So this needs to be a smooth transition, otherwise we can scrape the sealant off and then we can cause a leak. And obviously our transition wasn't smooth. I have to get the water pump on so that we can torque the front cover, because there's no bolts in on this side. All these water pump bolts helps tighten the front cover to the engine block. Look at this bugger. Front cover is on. I was about to start fitting the cylinder head, and then I made a discovery that I was supposed to put the sliding rail in here. There's the pin, which means I'm gonna have to take this front cover off again. So this is take 3 now on this front cover. First I forgot the sliding rail, and then secondly, when I put it on the second time, the timing chain actually dropped down at the bottom. So what I've done now is I've got some cable ties in here, just holding the timing chain in place. And hopefully it's third time lucky on this one, because every time I have to clean off all the sealer and it's just a nightmare. And finally, third time lucky. So now we can just finish off the front, get all the bolts in, get it torqued up to specs, get the water pump on here, and then we can move over to fitting the cylinder heads finally. But what do you guys think? Maybe we should quickly just check up on the pedal shop. Hopefully the S is done and she's sparkling like a brand new car. They're busy putting on the final coat of paint, coat number 3. And this S-Class, I can't wait to see it outside in the sun. So let's get this car out of the spray booth and see what it looks like. They also had to do a repair on the front bumper, and by the looks of it, this front bumper, you would never say that there was a repair done to this front bumper. And just look at this end result, all sparkly out in the sun. What a relief. This S-Class looks brand new. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I want to hear your thoughts. I'm so excited about this outcome, so let's get that engine sorted so we can get this thing on the road. Done. Looks like we are third time lucky. Timing chain's on its place, right at the bottom. It's looking good. Now we can get the cylinder heads on here. So now we're going to move over to the cylinder heads. There's our right bank, and then we've got our left bank. I have checked and measured all the bolts. There's our new head gasket. And then I know a lot of you are going to ask me, why didn't I skim the cylinder head and why didn't I skim the engine block? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. This engine runs a compression ratio of 10.5 to 1. And if you skim the cylinder head and the engine block, or just the cylinder head or just the engine block, you start running into issues because it's very sensitive. So I had the top surfaces on the engine block and the cylinder head. I had it checked by my engineers. They were happy with it, no leaks, nothing is wrong. So I just gave it a nice clean. It's nice and smooth, even though it doesn't really look that smooth, but it's nice and smooth. I cleaned off the edges. There was a bit of metal marks on the edges, obviously from the engineers handling the components. So I've just cleaned it off, and now we can slap it on. Here's our brand new head gasket. Let's go. So we've got the short bolts that goes on the outside. And then a long bolt that goes on the inside. And torque setting on these bolts, 40 Newton meters with a double 90-degree angle. I've got the bolts torqued down to 40 Newton meters, so I'll let this side settle, move over to that side, do the 40, come back, do my 90 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree, and then we're done. I'm now marking each bolt to help me keep track of the angles as I pull them. It's a lot of bolts with a lot of angles, so just marking these bolts helps you keep track of what you are doing and where you are. And there we have our first 90-degree angles completed. Now let's finish it off by doing our final 90-degree angle on these bolts. And the reason why I'm pulling left to right and not finishing off one cylinder head is I want to give the cylinder head bolts some time to rest, because if you're going to do your 40 degrees with your double 90s on the bolts simultaneously, you might overstress the bolts and it's not good for the bolts. You can break the bolts or you can damage your threads. And there we have all our cylinder head bolts torqued to specification. And now we can move on to the next component. Done. Phew. I must say, the fact that I've stripped this engine months ago makes this job quite interesting, because there's so many things that I need to figure out, like all these components. Where do they go? How do they go? Who goes first? Who goes last? But I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go. But just look at this beauty. Now this is a piece of engineering that is just worth appreciating. And I mean, there's so much that have gone into creating this engine. And what I like about it, this is very old school. I mean, you're running single cams, so it's not a lot of moving components at the top. Most of the stuff, like the intake manifold, everything is made of steel. It's not the Tupperware plastic junk. Everything is steel on this engine. If you're looking for a power plant to drop into something else, I'll definitely drop this thing in. This thing's coming along. Let's get the camshafts in and let's get the timing set. I'm now just getting the camshaft sprockets hooked in underneath the timing chain, just to keep the timing chain in place, so that I can enter the sliding pins for the sliding rails, holding them in place permanently. Now I'm just lubricating all the valve heads as well as the top section of the cylinder head, so that we can fit the rocker shaft assemblies, making sure that they are nicely lubricated. I'm also just putting some oil in the rocker shaft assembly, as this is actually the bottom bearing section for the camshaft. Now I can finally drop the camshaft in its position. Once that's done, I'm adding some more oil to the top, and then we can get the caps on there that's going to bolt everything down. These caps are numbered, so you can't get them wrong. Torque setting on these bolts is 14 Newton meters. And everything I've done on the right is just a repeat on the left. These caps are actually the top bearing for the camshaft. So it's very crucial that you torque them to spec. Otherwise, if you over tighten them, you are going to destroy your camshaft. And once all the bolts are torqued down, we can start setting the engine timing, and we're going to set this engine timing in a special way. You're supposed to use a special tool. We're going to set it with no special tool. I've got the camshafts torqued up, and to set the engine timing, there's a special tool that we need that slides over here. I don't have the special tool, and I'm not going to buy the special tool. I'm going to use a 27 spanner. And the timing on this engine is pretty simple. We've got a 30 degree that needs to line up with this little piece on the front cover. And then right here at the back, there's a little hole, a little mark, a keyway pin, and that we must just line that up and then we need to get these sprockets on their position where they need to be. So I've got the spanner over here that allows me to shift the camshaft if I need to shift the camshaft. So we're going to start on this side. The reason for that is the timing chain tensioner is on this side. So we start on this side, we get all the slack over to that side, and then we end off with this side. Once we're done, we can pop the tensioner in. So let's go. I'm now making sure that the crankshaft is 110% on 30 degrees. Then I've moved my camshaft sprocket into position so that I can slide it onto the camshaft, holding the camshaft with the 27 spanner in position. I just did a quick check to make sure that the timing is perfect. It doesn't look perfect, but let me set both sides. I'm making my own marks that will just help me if I need to adjust the timing. I've also set the right hand side, so now we can start turning this engine just to check these timing marks, and then if we need to make adjustments, we can make adjustments. And after turning the engine over a couple of times to check if these marks are the correct marks to set the timing, sure enough, these marks were lining up, but the timing wasn't set correctly. So I had to make a few adjustments to get it perfect. And I'll explain to you guys now what I had to do to get the timing right. First, I just need to torque up these sprockets. These bolts are torqued to 20 Newton meters, and it's followed by a 90-degree angle, which I mark with a marker, and then once that's done, I can just pull the bolts until my marks line up. And there we have our timing set and our bolts torqued to manufacturer specification. I've got the timing set, I'm happy. So those marks at the back were not the correct marks. So what I had to do is, you don't need the special tool. This is my special tool. It needs to be at a 90-degree angle. So the special tool slides in at 90 degrees. And all I did is I just made sure that once I've set the timing, that it's on 90 degrees. There we go. Timing set without a timing tool. 90 degrees. I'm happy with that. My marks are lining up perfectly. And now we can finally pop in the timing chain tensioner, torquing it to specification and resetting this tensioner in the motor. If you reset this tensioner outside the engine, you will put way too much strain on the timing chain and you can snap the timing chain. And once that's done, we can turn this motor and just listen to those combustion chambers building up pressure. And one would think with the timing set, it's downhill from here, but this is where things got interesting. No. No, 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 no. No. This is what happens when you strip an engine and 4 months down the line, you want to reassemble it. How could I miss this freaking thing? So as I was looking at the wiring harness, I've noticed this bugger. Now this thing is supposed to be down in there beneath the heads, which means in order for me to get that thing in there, I need to take the cylinder heads off. Now, to take the cylinder heads off, I'm gonna have to replace the head gaskets. And the head gaskets is, I think it's just over 5,000 Rand for the 2 head gaskets. But that's not my main concern. My main concern is these head gaskets are coming from Germany. That's another 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm gonna have to make a plan. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to get this thing to fit in there. I'm gonna have to do something now that I don't want to do, but I'm just gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to make a MacGyver to get that thing in there. Do I want to? No. Do I have a choice? No. Why? I need to get this engine done because I need to get this engine in the car because I've got other cars knocking on my door that I need to sort out as well. So unfortunately, this is gonna get ugly now. But before things get ugly, I'm gonna have to make sure that this whole engine is covered up and no dirt or anything can go into this engine, because the only way that I'm gonna get this thing to fit in here is to do some modifications. So I'm gonna have to get the grinder out. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. And once I've got the top section of the engine covered with all the components refitted, I can go ahead and tape up all the intake ports and any oil ports or anything that's exposed with some masking tape, just to avoid any filings from going through these ports and ending up inside the engine. And once the top section of the engine's done, I can finish off on the sides, flip the engine over, prime the oil pump by adding some oil down in the pickup and turning the engine to pump oil through the crankshaft and the camshafts and all the oil galleries, making sure that we've got oil pressure when it comes to starting up this car. And then finishing off the job by getting the oil pan onto this engine, and then we're basically done with this. And finally, this engine is closed up. Now we can make a mess. I'm also fitting the spark plugs, all 24 of them, and torquing them to manufacturer specifications, which is 25 Newton meters. It's very important to torque the spark plugs because this basically lines your spark plug up with the intake so that when your air and fuel mixture enters into the combustion chamber, you get the perfect spark. There we have this M279 engine completely rebuilt. Just missing one component that we need to get in there so we can finish off with the rest of the components on the outside of this engine. Let the fun begin. With the two mounting points cut off, I'm now sliding this unit in between the two cylinder heads just to see what sections are in my way. I'm marking them so that I know where to trim them off, and once that's done, we're gonna have to trim the cylinder heads just a teeny bit to make it slide in, so that we don't trim too much off the plastic and we end up causing a leak on this unit. Sometimes desperate times calls for desperate measures. I think there's pieces of my skin in my mouth. Damn. I must be honest, grinding with these glasses doesn't work for me. I know it protects my eyes, but yo, I can't see what I'm doing. There's some filings here. And blood on its way. And so the cutting had to continue. Just taking off a little bit on the head. And once that's done, I just had to go and clean all the filings off, and then we can do our test fit. Let's see, first test fit. Let's see if we got it right. So it's gonna go in, but it's just the front. Perfectos. Now would you look at that? Out, in. It's actually still got a keyway on the side, right over there, which I can use. So that slots in over there. That's where it's supposed to be. Oh, it's nice and stable. Chick. Might not even need some, I might not even need glue. Check this thing. This thing's not moving. Another thing that I got is, I got this fireproof sealant because this can handle up to 1500 degrees Celsius. So I'm gonna glue this thing in here to make sure it's nice and stable, doesn't move around, and whatever glue is on there is not gonna come off. I would call that a success. I don't like what I did. It's all about time. I'm not feeling particularly proud on what I had to do here, but at least now I can finish off this engine. And I didn't have to take the cylinder heads off. So I would just look at that. That should do the trick. Now we can slide this puppy in, and then it's never ever coming out again. There we go. I'll just leave it like that overnight, get it to set, and then tomorrow morning I can crack on and get this engine finished up so we can get it in the car. But that'll be a wrap for now, guys. If you want to see this engine fire up, you've got one thing to do, and it's to hit that subscribe button. And once you've hit that subscribe button, you'll see there's a thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one where this engine will be running. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.